Welcome to this week's video briefing. In Europe, there is a sense that the period of vacation is coming to an end, and with it, perhaps, the quiescence that seems to have settled over markets and even over policymakers' minds as far as the euro crisis is concerned. As we look out to September, we see a rather different prospect of activism, of decisions due, and perhaps a time of rattled markets and renewal of concern. Well, let's try and unpick some of the key sequences of events that are going to shape the future of the euro area as we move into the last part of the year. And who better to do that than with Stephanie Hare, Chief Europe Analyst at Oxford Analytica. Welcome, Stephanie. Let's focus on trying to set out some sort of roadmap, some timeline of decisions that need to be made, focusing first on September and bearing in mind, of course, that each of these decisions that we're looking for, which will determine the shape of the conference, of the crisis, are closely interconnected.
That's right. I mean, right now there's so many things on the radar that it's difficult to untangle them, but it helps if we take perhaps a more sequencing approach. So we know, we've already been given warning that Spain is going to be requesting a bailout for its banking sector. We will get the final amount that they will need in September. Yep. Now, another unknown is that Spain will probably be requesting some sort of sovereign bailout as well, amount to be undetermined. But Spain is waiting, and the world is waiting with it. Now, what is Spain waiting for? The government of Spain has said that it will request this assistance when it knows what the ECB's plans for involvement are. So everybody's now waiting for the ECB. But the ECB is waiting because it has already indicated that while it's quite happy to participate to bring Spanish borrowing costs to a more reasonable and sustainable level, it will not act unilaterally. It will do so only if Spain requests the two European bailout funds to provide assistance. Now, the problem is that one of these bailout funds, the permanent bailout fund, is currently in limbo at the moment. So now we must go to Germany, where the Constitutional Court is expected to deliver a verdict on September 12th. This will determine whether or not the European Stability Mechanism can become operational. Yeah. If that happens, we may be in a different period, a different phase, where suddenly all of this waiting could change very quickly, and we could be in a moment where lots of events are going to unfold rather rapidly.
And this is the first 2 weeks in September, so by the middle of that month, we could, as you say, be in a different environment.
That's right.
And a clearer one, and very possibly a more positive one.
Well, the optimistic view would be that if we get a favorable ruling by the German Constitutional Court that everything is now in place and we can just, like dominoes, click that first one and look forward to a solution. Unfortunately, I think it could be potentially more complicated than that. We're looking already at a quite philosophical and even legal debate between the European Central Bank and German policymakers, both within the Bundesbank, but also the German government, really questioning what is the mandate of the central bank. Is it supposed to be fueling sovereign borrowing? Yeah. No. Financing it, not at least from the German perspective, right. Although Mario Draghi, the ECB president, has indicated that there's a bit more flexibility to the ECB's mandate than has been previously understood. So we're going to look forward to that. But then we need to go to the northern part of Europe, to Finland, where the parliament is going to be looking very closely to see whether or not the Finnish government misled parliament about the seniority status of the European Stability Mechanism. Finland insists that the ESM, this bailout fund, that its debt is of the same seniority as that of the IMF. Now, we're looking at whether or not that's going to be relegated to junior status. There's pros and cons to both arguments, but right now this becomes a political question. Is Finland going to be willing to go along with this, or could we see obstruction by the Finnish government or the Finnish parliament? So it's not as necessarily easy as all of that. And of course, there's one final country that we must return to. We can diarize almost on a quarterly basis now for a crisis in Greece. And true to form, we're looking at a report from the Troika of the European Commission, the European Central Bank, and the IMF at the end of September, early October, whether or not Greece will be able to meet the conditions of its second bailout. Now, it's almost certain that it won't be able to meet those conditions, but what we don't know, what's less clear, is what the European and international lenders are willing to do about it. Indeed.
This is the first time I think we've spoken about the European crisis before mentioning the word Greece, which may speak to a sense in which the Greek dimension is no longer as central or as important as it was as this unfolds.
Well, this is the question. On the one hand, markets have priced in the possibility of a Greek default. There's been talk of an exit of Greece. We've seen German policymakers, some of them say this wouldn't be a catastrophe anymore. And that may be true. The question is whether or not a Greek default would have implications on Spain, whether or not in turn it could drag Italy, which so far has been able to raise funding and seems to be quite stable. If it were to drag Italy into the crisis properly, you would see a very different tone happening both within markets and policymakers. Italy has the third largest bond market in the world. So what happens in Greece? This is the difference between
Euro muddle and global crisis.
Indeed. It may not just be a European problem. If Greece is a problem for Europe, but not the world. But if Greece doesn't get that tranche that it's expecting in October, it will default. That could become a problem for the world if it takes down a few other European players with it.
Stephanie, thank you very much, and thank you for watching this video briefing. The issues we've discussed that will do much to shape the future of the euro crisis will feature prominently in our Global Horizons 2012 conference, which takes place right in the middle of this period we've been talking about, the middle of September, September the 19th to the 21st, here in Christchurch, to be precise. We'd love to see you there. If you'd like to come, do let us know, and we'll be looking forward to hearing from you and seeing you here in person.